Welcome back to the Rink Rap Podcast presented by Forever Blueshirts. I'm Jim Cerny. Really appreciative to have NHL Network's EJ Hradek join us here. We're going to talk a little World Juniors and, some NHL news and notes as well. But first of all, great job. I know we were talking off the air, but I want to get it out there. Great job by you calling the games, calling the action at the World Juniors for NHL Network.
Well, thanks a lot, Jim. I really appreciate it. It was it was so much fun. It's kind of a blessing for me to be able to do it and to do the tournament and to have the opportunity to do more games over the last couple of years. And, I got to work with Tony Granato, and, Tony's such a great person and great teammate, and, just been involved with all different parts of hockey through his many years playing, coaching, and he's kind of done everything. So it was great to be with him. And then, our producer, Megan Redwood, did a great job helping us out, and the people back in Secaucus were helping, on that end. And, all the TSN folks that are up there, like we're using kind of their feed as we go. And they've got, the things, that they bring to the table with the way they cover that tournament. I think they got 6 or 7 slow-mo cameras. And it was just, the pictures were fantastic. So it was a great opportunity. And it was great that, Team USA winning the gold medal for a second straight year. I mentioned off the air before we started here. My history with the tournament goes back a ways. I was there in Helsinki in 2004 when they won their first gold medal. I was the color analyst on the 2013 broadcasts with Steve Mears when they won another gold, and now I've been able to do the last 2, calling them, one from the studio, one from on site in Ottawa, and it's been it was really a thrill. And thanks to the USA Hockey people, the players, the coaches, Dave Fisher, who does helps us with the, getting everything ready, who's the kind of the communications whiz there for many years. So all the help we get is terrific. And it was a lot of fun. It's a great tournament. Like we were talking, it's a great tournament. Yeah. It's great to see those kids out there, and some great stories every year, and got to see all these young players who several of them will get the opportunity to play, in the National Hockey League in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to get the broadcast question out of the way first. I'm a broadcaster at heart.
Yes, you are.
And, you never know when the big moments are going to come in your career. Like for me, I didn't know I was going to call Wayne Gretzky's final goal in the NHL.
Wow.
Something you couldn't predict, right?
Yeah.
And Wade Flaherty, Madison Square Garden against the Islanders, right? So, but I couldn't plan for that.
Yeah.
Now put me in your shoes, because you're planning, the U.S. is, once they win the semifinal game, they're trying to make history, trying to be the first U.S. team to win consecutive gold medals at the World Juniors. It the entire night before, it the day of, it during the game. And, hey, now it's going to overtime.
Yes.
And either they're going to do it or not. So walk me through kind of your mindset. Like, how much thought did you put into, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this one right?
Yeah. That's the thing, Jim, because you don't get a do-over. Like when it happens, it just happens. And I did give it some thought as to, what I wanted to, the things I wanted to make sure I said or thought I would say in the moment. I know that last year when I called the Cup final with Florida and Edmonton, I remember I wrote out a little bit of a paragraph to have handy, particularly as it went along, because it could have been a sweep, right?
Right.
And then it was 5 games, and it was then we got to historic territory where it could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have something, just in case, in the moment. In this case, I didn't do that. But we got into overtime. It could go either way, right? So, I was just riding the emotion of the game at that time. And the way the goal was scored, it was really a dream for a broadcaster, right? Like, sometimes it's a tip, it's a deflection, you can't see it, you don't know it goes in. Right. Like this was a clean breakaway where he comes in. It's basically the old he shoots, he scores kind of situation. And it was a player that was so unexpected in that situation in Teddy Stiga, who had not even had a shot on goal in the tournament, more or less a goal. Right. And to think that he would, that's the other thing, Jim, and you know this very well. He gets the puck off the rush. I pick it up because I'm in the middle of another thought about there's no commercials in overtime. The puck was all the way at the other end of the ice. So I'm like, oh, there's no commercial, just to let the viewer know we're playing straight through. And in the middle of that, this pass comes in from Bouillon, and here comes Stiga in. So now I go right to that, but like, I'm just happy I got the right guy, because it could be 12 and not 2 there, right? It could be Hagens, who's more likely to be on the ice in that situation. And so I picked up that it was Stiga. I called that it was, I called the goal. And then it was just kind of, Teddy Stiga, like that was the thing for me. His first goal of the tournament. What a great time for it. Team USA. Then I went into Team USA, makes history. They win. They go back to back, or so. I don't even know. You're just in the moment. As again, very well from having done it many, many times. You're in the moment there. So it was different than the final last year, where I did try to prepare a little something that I wanted to say, because those calls get played over and over again. So I mean, in the end, you live with what you say in that moment. I'm glad I got the guy. I got Stiga right. I think I was just riding the wave of the emotion in the moment. So people, how this business is. People like it or they don't like it. It's like a movie. It's like a book. We both go. Some people think the book is great. Some people think it's terrible. That's how it is. But that was the thinking for me, is I did give it some thought in the run-up, but once we got into that game where they were behind in the game and they didn't really look good in the first 20 minutes, we get to overtime, and I'm kind of riding the emotion of the game more than anything else.
It's so funny. As you were talking about that, you're like, oh my gosh, it could have been 12, and 12's the more line. It reminds me of, and I'm sure you've heard Howie Rose tell this story before, the infamous Matteau. And he said, oh, and then he looks at the monitor. He goes, oh no, Esa-Tikkanen might have put that puck over the goal line. And he said, I'm going to have to go into a studio and overdub,
re-record it. Yeah. Oh boy, that's the worst fear, right? Is, I've learned over these last couple of years, when I've done more and more games. I did games earlier in my career. I did a bunch of college hockey for ESPN when I was there, but I've come back to do them again now. And that's one of the things, and this really well, Jim, because you did it for many years, is like, the game is happening so fast.
Yeah.
And you want to get every call all the time. You want to be on it. But I realized that, because it's happening fast, and depending upon the jerseys and what you can see from where your vantage point is, and if you're in the studio, it's obviously different than if you're there. But I've learned that if I don't say it, it's not wrong. And so, in a case where I'm not sure, I'll just say, he takes it, he comes in, he shoots, he scores, and I'll wait instead of instead of jumping myself, because then you're wrong, So you're trying to be on it all the time, but I have learned some little tricks in terms of doing these games. Is like, if I'm not sure of who has the puck for whatever reason, or who scored in front, on a loose puck or something, you try to lay out until just ride again the emotion of the moment. They score, they lead, they've won, whatever it is, right. And then try to sort out who exactly scored. So again, in that case, I was lucky that it was a very clean play, and I didn't misidentify the player. And I can see Howie's fear for that must have just been a nightmare in that moment for him to have that even go through his mind. Because you're just frustrated that you want to get it right, but of course he did get it right. So that's
yes, he did. Yes, he did,
as he does all the time, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. So our Ranger viewers here obviously fired up. It's 2 straight gold medals for Drew Fortescue and for Gabe Perreault. Let's break down them a little bit. Obviously, getting to see them firsthand. Listen. Especially the way things are going on Broadway now, the Rangers need something positive, and the possibility that Gabe Perreault could turn pro, possibly at the end of his sophomore season here in April, is hanging out there. Talk to us about Gabe Perreault. What do you see from him? How do you project him as an NHL player from what you saw in person?
Well, he's a very, very clever player. I mean, he sees the ice really well. He makes plays. He's had this good fortune now these last couple of years, right? He's played a lot with Ryan Leonard and It was Will Smith last year. It was James Hagens this year. They've had a lot of reps together, whether it be at the National Development Program or at Boston College. So like that's an advantage, right? To have that that consistency of playing with the same people and really high end players and knowing what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see when Gabe is in a different situation, like let's say if he comes to the Rangers and he's going in, he's making that pro debut, like he's with different people. But I just think he's a really clever player. He's high-end IQ. He's a good skater. He can shoot the puck. He does a lot of things well from an offensive standpoint. And, he's obviously has the pedigree with his dad, Yannick, who played in the National Hockey League. So, that is something that, again, it's just you can't teach that. I mean, you grow up around the game and around someone. And Yannick Perreault was really a very clever and crafty player himself.
Yeah.
And he played with a lot of just no panic at his AJ, no panic Yannick, right? Like that was one of the things people said about him. But he brought a lot to the table. So I think Gabe is going to be a good pro. I think, there's a good chance he could leave after this year. I mean, he's in that window. We'll see if he decides to do that. If he does, I think, I think he's got a chance to play in the league. If he decides to stay another year, I'm big on these guys, staying until they feel they're ready. I mean, it's always, you want to strive, you want to be able to thrive and not just survive, right? You want to get into the National Hockey League. You want to be able to be a player. You don't want to just try to be hanging on. You know how hard it is to play in this league. You've been watching it for a long time. And, you don't want to be one of those guys just hanging on to the rail, just trying to stay involved. So, I'm sure that he and his, representatives, his family, his dad will talk about that. But it's pretty clear he's going to be an NHL player and he's going to be a really, a good offensive player that's going to be helpful in getting pucks to guys who are scorers, and he's going to be a good piece for somebody, down the road with the Rangers with how they set up their team in the future. So I like Gabe a lot. I think he's got a lot of upside. So we'll see if he decides to come out or not. I get the sense that those guys, they did 2 years. Some of them might come out. Like Will Smith came out a year early.
Right.
I thought that's, he's getting by in San Jose, but I just think that extra year helps these guys. And these college facilities now, Jim, they are off the chart. I mean, in terms of the conditioning and the weight rooms and all the things they have there for these kids to continue to grow and develop and get bigger and stronger, and also at school to develop into the person they're going to be in their lives. So I just think all that stuff is really great. And I think the guys who stay for the extra years are really help themselves. But he's a really high-end player and a high-end kid. And, as for Fortescue, I got to talk to him a little bit more this year than, obviously being there. And I just was really impressed with the way this guy defends. I mean, he's about 6'1", I would say, maybe a little taller, but you could see he's got like a long reach, and he just defends so well. And he's a very bright young man. He's one of those guys, Jim, that's just going to play in the league for a long time, and you're not going to always notice everything he does, but he does so many things well defensively. And he's going to be one of those guys too, that's going to score the odd goal. That's going to be a big goal at a big moment. Like he reminds me a little bit of Kenny Morrow as a lefty.
Right.
Kenny was a righty, and Kenny was bigger, longer, different era. But I just get this is a guy that just comes to play. He's grown up and played it with all these high-end players, and he just defends so well. He uses his stick so well. I just think, whenever he decides to come out, I think he's going to have a chance to play in the league for, 10, 15 years if he stays healthy, because he's just one of those guys that's going to be able to play and help teams win.
Yeah, it's funny. It's always a mistake. I know you're going to roll your eyes and say, boy, why did you even get engaged in this? But I was engaged with the fan about Fortescue, and I had posted that, boy, I love his game. I really, and I went into, defense this and defense first.
Yeah.
And, playing with William and just how well they paired together. And just one fan was all over me. I don't even see that guy out there. He doesn't do anything. I'm like, no. You just made my point for me.
Yes, you did. He did, right?
Because you don't see, or you don't see the spectacular but you don't see anything negative either that stands out with him. And that to me is what stands out about Drew Fortescue.
You know what's funny you mentioned that is because after the game we were talking about it with David Carl, and Tony Granado was with me, and Tony said that very thing. He said, I didn't really even notice him out there. And David Carl stopped immediately and said, "That's right.
Yep.
That's why he's so good, is like when you don't even notice him, but he's doing all these things in the game to help us be successful and help us win." I mean, he really leaned on Zeev Buium a lot. He has him at Denver, and he's a Minnesota Wild draft pick. He leaned on him a lot. He played him a lot, and obviously Cole Hudson is. I never thought I would see another Lane Hudson, and now there's Cole Hudson, his brother, and he might be better. I mean, it's just. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, he's just a terrific young player, and so much fun to watch. But like right after those two guys, the next guy, and I think Fortescue might have had even more minutes than Hudson when you go down and look through the minutes. I mean, he might have been the second highest minutes on the team in terms of their defensemen. He really had the coach's trust, and he just, again, watching all the time would be, when you're calling the game, you're looking for a stick deflection or like a good defensive play or a box out. And it's over and over and over in my head as I'm calling the game. Oh, good stick there by Fortescue, good, good body position there. Like he was never someone to run into bad ice. He would win his battles. He would take care of business in front of the net. He has the great stick to protect the passing lanes. Like I said, I just think he's one of these guys that if he's on your team, you're going to be happy to have him. And he's a terrific young man. I got to talk to him a little bit, the other day, and just really impressed with him.
So you mentioned David Carl. That leads into my next point here. Talk about being at the top of the heap right now.
Yeah.
If he wants to stay at Denver, great. Got a great program there. If you want to continue working with the U.S. program as well, great. You just won 2 gold medals in a row.
Yep.
Or if you want to become an NHL coach, you're going to have some suitors coming your way right now. Yeah. Do you have any feel whatsoever if David Carl might be thinking about the NHL or if that's, the next step and sooner rather than later?
Well, he's already had some suitors, and I got a chance to talk to David in the summer, and, just from our conversation, the thing I walked away with is like, boy, this guy's got his head on straight, man. He's a 35-year-old guy. He's won 2 national titles already. Now he's won a 2nd gold medal, but he just, in talking to him, he's like, boy, the NHL coaches, it's a tough life. And it's, it's not, they're not always, they're not always treated all that well, really, when you think about it. I mean, guys we've seen it, right, all over. Gerard Gallant has a great season. The next year he's in the playoffs, he's fired, right? Peter Laviolette had a great year last year. This year it's a big struggle. He's on the hot seat, right? Guys come and go in the NHL, coaches come and go. And I think David was very aware of, how that works. And I got the sense from him that when that time comes, and I think he's going to want that challenge at some point, but he's going to want it on his terms, meaning that he's going to want to feel like he's going to go somewhere where ownership, management is really, he's got some pull there. And he's not just a guy that comes in and if it's a bad start, you get thrown out with the bathwater, so to speak. So he's going to be looking for, I think, the right spot for him, and a place that he feels comfortable, and a place that he feels that he's got the real backing of the management group there for hopefully for the longer haul than 18 months. So I think those things will go into his thinking. He's obviously very comfortable with the University of Denver. They've had a wonderfully successful program there. To think they've won, 2 NCAA titles already in his short stay there. I mean, it's been pretty terrific. So he is certainly going to be someone that a lot of teams are going to be checking in on. And I think at some point in time, he will make that decision to come to the National Hockey League. Maybe it'll be this summer. But I do think, again, I think the situation will have to be right in his mind for him to make the jump because, to your point, he could stay at the University of Denver and keep doing the things he's doing there, which he does pretty well.
Absolutely. You mentioned the Rangers, you mentioned Peter Laviolette. He goes from franchise record 55 wins, franchise record 114 points, President's Trophy to 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
And that, and now he's sitting on the hot seat, though I get the impression that seat, of course it's hot. But Chris Drury doesn't seem to be looking to make the move with the coach here? Like, there haven't been a lot of rumblings about, the coach is on the hot seat. No, what are the rumblings we hear? Oh, Trouba and Kreider are mentioned in a trade, memo. Those are the things we're hearing. Is that the vibe that you're getting? And could it be, and this is just a theory, that Chris Drury knows that, if I can Peter Laviolette, I'm turning up the heat on myself because now Gerard Gallant, 2 100-point seasons in a row, gone.
Yep.
Peter Laviolette, best regular season in franchise history, gone. Okay, I bring in a new coach, but now who are they going to look at next? It's just a theory I might have, but I guess your thoughts on that, kind of that general scope there.
Well, I think your theory is probably pretty good. I mean, again, Jim, you've been watching this a long time. And, I always used to hear this, the general manager, when he gets hired, has like the 3 bullets to use. And, basically saying you can get 3 coaches, but like you start firing too many coaches, usually the focus shifts to the manager in most cases. And the manager is kind of, the next guy in line. So there might be some of that. I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, Peter, I thought did a great job last year with the Rangers, and got them to within 2 games of going to the Stanley Cup final last year with that team. And so I don't think he forgot how to coach. I just think that if you've been watching the Rangers, they've had players. I mean, I used to say when I scouted, I just did some scouting work for Dallas in the 90s, and I got to learn from a lot of the older guys that were there. It was one of the only smart things I've done in my life. I'd sit there and listen to them. I mean, just shut up and listen, and you'd get a lot of, you'd get a lot of really good information, and you learned about, from their experience. And, guys are getting better and getting worse every day. And that's why you want good scouts, because they're watching, because guys are going up, guys are coming down. And so over the last, I would say 18 months for me watching, Mika Zibanejad has been on kind of a steady, slow downward path. And I mean, that's continued this year for whatever reason. I don't know, injuries or, you don't even know. I don't know him that well. I see him from time to time when I'm at the games or over the course of time. He was a great acquisition by the Rangers when they got him. Jeff Gorton, making that deal. That was a terrific deal. He's been a great player for the Rangers. But none of this lasts forever, right? And guys have times in their career where they go up, they go down. And he's been on a pretty long, I would say, decline. I would say over the last 18 months for me watching, it's been kind of this slow decline to the point now where it's really, it's really more noticeable than it's ever been. So this is your number one center. If your number one center is going to continue on a slow decline, you could get Scotty Bowman, you could get Toe Blake, you could get Herb Brooks, you get whoever you want. When your number one center is struggling to the degree that the number one center with the New York Rangers is struggling, that's a big problem. That becomes a bigger problem that gets bigger as you go along, because it impacts the power play. It impacts his confidence level on a shift-to-shift basis, a night-to-night basis. And when your number one center isn't producing like that, now you're having to move. Maybe you're having to drop him. You're having to take him off the power play, right? Now guys, the other guys are getting opportunity, but there's a reason why the team was good when they were in the roles they were in, because maybe they're not best suited for other roles. So that's a problem. Also with Adam Fox, right? He gets impacted a little bit by the underperformance there of the number one center. And he's coming off an injury. And I can think by watching him this year, I don't think Adam Fox has been at the top of his game right now. Maybe it's the lingering effects of an injury. Maybe it's the shuffling around of partners. Who knows what it is? So I think, these are things now that have really disrupted that's the groundwork. Those are the pillars of your team. And when they start to tremble or they weaken, now you have a problem. So now you have the general manager, they're looking at it. What do you do? He's traded away Trouba. He's traded away Kakko. Those were not the big pieces that are the difference makers to me. Right. And so, now there's some talk, there was rumors about whether they were trying to trade Zibanejad to Vancouver. I don't know. First of all, that's a hard trade to make because I don't know what kind of trade protection Mika has. I'd have to go look it up. But
complete no move.
Well, so right away, that's almost impossible to do, right? So that's the first thing. He makes a good amount of money. The people in Vancouver or whoever, is this is a hard guy to move right now. So you got to hope that you have to try to build him back up and get him back on that upward trajectory if you can. And so, like I said, the problems they have right now are tricky ones. I don't think firing the coach is necessarily the answer, because then the question is, who do you bring in? Who's next?
Right.
I don't know who that person is. I mean, I know Joel Quenneville is out there. He's a great coach. He's won 3 times. He's won the Stanley Cup with Chicago. He's had certain, things that have happened in his career, but he's available and able to come back and coach. And certainly, if I was looking for somebody, he'd be somebody that'd be very high on my list. I probably would have already hired him by now if I was in a team looking for a coach. But, I don't know, again, as I said earlier, bring in whoever you want. If your number one center is struggling and you're not being able to move him up, or you're not being able to move him, your number one defenseman is not quite where he has been in the past, and now your goaltender is out,
Right.
I mean, this is a real problem for this team right now. And, it's got to be a really tough thing. And, and Chris, I don't think, this is just my opinion. Obviously, everybody has their different opinions. Chris, I got to see him as a player. I knew him as a young person. I mean, I think he's struggling a little bit in this role. And I don't know if it's interpersonal relationships or what it is, or managing above or managing below, but I think he's struggling in this role. And I think that's another problem for this team. So, they have some really good pieces there. If they can get Zibanejad back moving in the right direction, that would help them be better. They got to get Shesterkin back. But they got some challenges right now because they've got a group that's an older group of players, and then they got a group of younger guys. And in the middle, there's not as many of those guys that are right in the middle of their career helping their team right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, and I'll let you go in a sec. You mentioned, the veteran guys, and then the younger guys. One of those guys that's caught in the middle right now, and boy, you talk about guys that seem like they were on this trajectory that are now flatlined and go. What's happened to Keandre Miller? Miller, he's 24 years old, and the pot of gold is right there, right in front of him. He's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights at the end of the season. And Chris Drury and the Rangers have to be at a point now where they say, oh boy, we thought that, we're going to set aside the money. We're going to sign this guy long-term. He's going to be the part of the core going forward for years. And now they got to be saying, oh boy, now what do we do? Right. It should have been Miller and Fox for years to come. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Now you got to go. Oh.
Yeah, it's been a real struggle for Keandre. There's no question. And I watch his body language after things happen on the ice. This is going back before he got dinged up a little bit and missed some time. Obviously, I've been away covering the World Juniors, so I haven't seen as much lately. But when I saw those moments, it was a game against Chicago, one of those Monday night games. I think they had lost back-to-back games on. They lost to Seattle on Sunday. I did that game off the monitor for NHL Network, and then the Sunday game. And his body language, you could just tell this guy was really searching for answers, and a loss of confidence was pretty clear. But, he's such a terrific athlete. And to your point, he looked like, this was moving in one direction. But again, right, Jim? Players are getting better. Players are getting worse every day. And he's a young man. And I think that there's room for him to, rediscover that confidence. But it's going to take time. And sometimes players like that, maybe they don't find it in the place where they are now. I would be very hesitant to try to move him because I just think he's got a lot of upside to his game. I'm not really ready to give up on Keandre Miller, because you got to remember too, he came to the position even later, he started playing defense. I think he was like 15 or 16. And I mean, it's a hard position to play. And when things start going bad for you, it can snowball and it could really, mess with you. So I think they've just got to be nurturing and kind of keep working with them and try to build them back up and get them there. But again, it goes back to the same problems, right? When your number one center is underachieving and your number one defenseman is kind of not playing the way that he's played in the past, it trickles down, and now the team is struggling, and now other individuals feel the effects of that kind of collapsing infrastructure around them. But I got a lot of time for Keandre Miller. I think he's a really talented player. I don't know what has gone wrong that he's taken this downward swing, but there's no question. You watch the games, it's very clear to see.
Good stuff. He is EJ Hradek from NHL Network, and back in the studio now that he's back home from Ottawa with this great call at the World Juniors. So we'll be tuning in, we'll be watching, and we'd love to catch up with you again down the road.
Jim, it's my pleasure. It's nice to catch up with you a little bit. We've known each other kind of a long time and passing over the years. So anytime I get to talk to you is a good time for me. So thanks a lot.